welcome to episode number 5 of The Empire in Exile. We're switching up hosting duties for episode number 5. I am Josh Houselander. My co-host tonight is Dorf. We have a little bit of a different kind of show for you tonight. A little more philosophical than we've done in the past, a little deeper than we've done in the past. Tonight's topic is simulation theory. Now, this is something that I've covered on at least 2 other podcasts I can think of back when Dorf and I were both with the Empire Media. And we really wanted to bring this to the forefront tonight on this show and mix it up a little bit, see what we had. So how are you doing, Dorf?
Not too bad. Other than we will say this is take 2. It had some technical difficulties that, we did about 15 minutes, 12, 15 minutes here to begin, so if we sound like, oh yeah, we've already talked about this, it's because we have. It was so many technical issues, we said screw it and scrapped it. So
yeah, I mean,
take 2.
all you people out there listening should know that we just did 15 minutes of epically amazing podcasting,
radio gold that will be lost forever to history. Although the raw files are still on my computer, I think I'm gonna I would angrily throw them in the digital trash before this is all over.
So we did this. It was amazing, but we're gonna do our very best to replicate that for you and come right back at you with some more simulation theory gold for your listening ears. So Dorf, I'll jump right into it. When it comes to simulation theory, we're going to do kind of some basic stuff here tonight. Just break it down. A lot of people have heard of simulation theory.
Most likely in passing, especially if you pay attention to Elon Musk at all, because when his appearance on Joe Rogan, they discussed that in a little bit of detail.
They did. Yeah, they did for sure. And Elon Musk is somebody who is totally on board with the simulation theory idea, which, as am I, spoiler alert. But some of the people who I really want to cover tonight, even if it's just brief, are Nick Bostrom and Mark Solomon. Now, Nick Bostrom, professor, PhD, genius, scientist and philosopher from Oxford University in England. He is what I would like to consider the modern day godfather of simulation theory. Much of what we believe, much of what has sparked our imaginations, much of what has really got us thinking on this is the rock-solid logic and reason that Nick Bostrom has thrown out there. Mark Solomon is somebody who I would like to recommend to people if they're looking into, if they want more information on this stuff, want more real in-depth information on this. Mark Solomon is the author of the short book, but short but very jam-packed with information. The short book just basically called On Computer Simulated Universes by Mark Solomon. It's almost just more like it's really just a dissertation, if you will. I don't, it's available for purchase in book form, but it's an excellent dissertation on this. And he basically just reiterates Bostrom's ideas, but he does it in a good way that I think is a great way to start if you really want to go head on into simulation theory. Now, Nick Bostrom's ideas are pretty basic to begin with. He basically just tries to throw out a catch-22, if you will, about how we really need to consider that simulation theory is a distinct possibility, or that the idea that we are living in a computer simulation is a distinct possibility. And I'll throw that down. I'll rattle it out real quick here. Because Nick Bostrom would tell you that one of three things, in his opinion, must be possible. Number one is that we and all other civilizations like us will inevitably die out or destroy ourselves or be destroyed by someone else, or die out naturally before we create an ancestor simulation. I prefer the idea of a computer simulation. Nick Bostrom really likes this idea of an ancestor simulation. He really likes that term.
I mean, eventually, if you have the ability to do one, you have the ability to do the other.
Exactly. Which is why I actually like to say computer simulation.
It's an unnecessary splitting of hairs.
Agreed completely. Which is why I kind of like to say computer simulation, because I feel like ancestor simulation leads to an assumption that doesn't necessarily have to be assumed, but kind of is, in my opinion. But I totally agree with you, Dorf. It's an unnecessary splitting of hairs, and the terms might as well be, or could very well be, interchangeable. The second thing that Nick Bostrom says could possibly happen is that we, or other civilizations like us, will decide to not process an ancestor simulation. That for moral reasons, ethical reasons, whatever reasons would be presented before us, legal reasons, a government tells you not to, whatever it is, that we will decide that it is for the best to not process this type of simulation, that we will get the ability to do so, but choose not to. The third one says that because we know we will be able to have this technology eventually, that we are most likely...
It's probably in like the next 5 years.
Yeah, maybe like tomorrow. I mean, it's right there.
It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of money.
Yeah, right. No, you're right. It's a matter of funds. It's a matter of trying. It's a matter of time. It's definitely a matter of money, like you said, and just computing power that we already have the capability of doing, but it's just whether or not you can. It's like the idea of saying that, I'm making up numbers here, that no car's ever had more than 2,000 horsepower, but we need a car that has 2,200 horsepower. It's not like it can't be done.
It's just a matter of at this point, it hasn't been practical yet to do it.
Right, and I mean,
the first tanks, the first tanks in World War I rolled off the line for Britain had 4 horsepower. 4. Realistically, you can get around and do pretty much everything you want to do carrying a couple people with about 90.
Yeah.
Anything over that is unnecessary vanity from a utilitarian perspective. But at the same time, if we have a new goal here of we want to be able to simulate the entire world with infinitely complex levels of detail, why not go for 2,200 in this example?
Exactly. No, exactly. So Nick Bostrom's third idea, is that because of that, we are most likely living in a simulation. That because it's possible, any civilization that can make one simulation won't make one. They'll make dozens, they'll make hundreds, they'll make thousands. So if there are 1,000 simulations for every one real universe, then naturally, mathematically speaking, we are more likely to be in a simulation than not in a simulation. Pretty basic idea, really. And like I said, I like to consider Nick Bostrom to be the modern day godfather of this idea, but this isn't a new idea. We like to link it with computers now because it makes so much sense to do so. Because we see what we've done with computers and what we can do with computers. It makes so much sense to link it to a simulation through a computer. But this dates back to Plato's allegory of the cave.
It does, but at the same time, if you really get down to the base levels of what computing is, it's just answering a bunch of yes and no questions in rapid succession that build off each other.
Right.
Binary computing, and that is our current way of doing it until you get into quantum computing, which then
ones and zeros.
Well, it's not ones and zeros anymore. It can be simultaneously. It's not 1 or 0. It can be 1 and 0. Until you get into quantum computing, which I am not educated enough on the subject to speak brightly on. But
in Dorf, I'm not. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So for the perfect example of how the way like databases are queried now is you ask a database a question, essentially saying, find me instances that match this. And it goes and checks one by one and spits back out inputs. Now, with the level of computing power we have now, even in binary computing, that's relatively quick for, functional data sets, but can still take a while if stuff isn't properly indexed. In binary computing, you can tell it, this is my understanding, I hope I'm not wrong on this, you can essentially query whether or not something is in a certain state, and it doesn't have to check line by line. It just knows where it just is and knows where it is, and that's how much faster higher level processes get sped up. I guarantee I'm oversimplifying and or butchering that. Anyway.
For all intents and purposes, you're making sense, Dorf. And I don't want to get too deep into this, but it is definitely worth mentioning. There is a quantum simulation theory. And Dorf, I don't know if you're familiar at all with quantum simulation theory.
This will be new to me.
But quantum simulation theory this sounds so difficult, but it's not. This is actually an extremely basic idea. If simulation theory says, well, a civilization possible, that has the possibility to make a simulation could make upwards of 1,000 simulations. So then naturally, we're 1,000 times more likely to be in a simulation than be in an actual reality. Now, when you take into account that the reality that simulated you may not be real either, that said reality is a simulated reality, and they're one of 1,000 realities that simulated 1,000 realities.
We've crossed into a multiverse, and it's just it's a endless loop of simulations.
So now we're talking thousands. But if you bring in the idea of quantum computers, then now that plane of existence that's creating you isn't creating 1,000 simulations. They're creating 1 billion simulations.
Or infinite simulations.
Right. So by Nick Bostrom's very own logic, we are far more likely to be one from a quantum simulation than we are from a regular simulation. If 1,000 real worlds created 1,000 simulations, but 1,000 of those created 1 million simulations or 1 billion simulations through quantum mechanics, quantum computing power, quantum computers, then we are far more likely to be a simulation in the quantum realm than in the regular realm. So, I mean, that's just...
That doesn't mean it's absolutely
it's kind
true. That doesn't mean... Here's the thing I don't want mistaken. That doesn't mean it's absolutely true. It just means it's a higher probability than not that it is.
Right.
You know, this is one of those things that I want to make abundantly clear for anybody who, you know, I'll even admit myself as a non-practicing Christian. I still believe in a creation myth. I just think that our record keeping as a religion blows. So that you know, something like that, you know, I still haven't seen anything that outside of, you know, there was a Big Bang and then just stuff was. I haven't seen anything more compelling, and I doubt that I will be able to be compelled out of that position, that at some point there was a creation event and a creator. But different show, different time. Anyway.
Dorf, I think that's actually an excellent segue. And yeah, I mean, to end the idea of the quantum simulation theory, the quantum simulation theory in essence just says if you believe in simulation theory, you kind of sort of have to believe in quantum simulation theory. It doesn't change much. It actually changes very little as to what you believe or what it is. If we're in someone else's simulation, we're in someone else's simulation. It doesn't really matter if they're
well, I mean, even in line with a creation story and you know, I think the more the philosophical term is a creation myth is, well, I mean, cool. You know, our simulation that we currently live in is run by our creator, which we refer to as God.
Sure. No, actually, Dorf, as a, I mean, you're talking with someone who is a absolute believer in simulation theory and who is a devout Catholic. And I see no contradiction between those views in any way.
No, they
truly do not
coexist. That's absolutely true. They can coexist.
I actually believe that that simulation theory ties in with ancient beliefs and biblical beliefs, or I shouldn't even say biblical because that means just Christian, but religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, than the vast majority of other scientific views. I think it plays in very well, and I think it actually it ties in with a lot of other theories that exist out there. Fermi's paradox is one.
That's a good. Yeah, I want to bring that up too. And it's just
I know you're a fan of Fermi's paradox.
Well, it's not that it's a fan. The fandom I don't know is that, you know, it's just one of those, the distinctions that it explains. You know, yes, it is just a theory, and unfortunately, we lack the means to test it. Because ultimately, you know, it's an attempt to answer the Drake equation. And if Drake is correct, we aren't alone, but we'll never find out that we aren't alone. When especially when you tie that in with the Fermi paradox, it's just it.
Well, Drake would tell us that we are definitely not alone.
Drake says we're definitely not alone. The Fermi paradox is more that, yes, we aren't alone, but we'll never know that we'll never know for sure, definitively for sure. The speed limit of data and our ability to discover things, whether by traveling ourselves, our lifetimes are not long enough, nor can we survive the conditions of interstellar space to make that journey in even multiple lifetimes.
Dorf, if I may,
about two places. I mean, the technology exists that, you know, essentially, I forget what it's called. It was an idea dreamt up in like the 60s that you essentially take a spaceship and drop nukes out the back and ride the shockwave. You could get up to 0.2 times the speed of sound, or speed of light. You know, 20% of the speed of light. And you could get to our closest neighbor within our own galaxy, that being the Alpha Centauri system, in a human lifetime. It's a conceivable mission. The only problem is you're riding the shockwave of multiple nuclear explosions, and then you still have to slow down, which, at traveling at that speed, there's not going to be anything large enough that you could get caught in the gravitational well of to spin it down. So you would be along for the ride. You'd see like Alpha Centauri and wave it on your way past, and that's about all you could. Alpha Centauri.
I mean, I feel like that's just.
Past, but you could.
I feel like all that. I feel like all that is. Those are very cool ideas, but those are just ideas based on we don't know how to do that yet. This is kind of like the idea of, I remember, years ago when I was a teenager, I'm riding a car with someone, and he bumped up his grouty Chevy Cavalier to about 109 miles an hour, which is about what it could go. And we're pushing it, and the RPMs are racing, and he said, "Oh, this is as fast as it could go." And I had a little bouncy ball in my pocket, and I threw it at the windshield. I said, "Well, then how fast was that ball going?" And from that, you come up with the idea that there is never really a top speed. There's a top speed with a certain idea, and then you bounce off the top speed from there.
The only problem is with your idea there, Josh, is there's limits to that.
Is there
our understanding of physics and what we know about physics is the speed of light is the speed limit. As matter approaches.
So if I'm going the speed of light in a Cavalier and I throw a Super Bowl, how fast is that ball going?
The problem is you can't go the speed of light in a Cavalier. So
yeah.
the mass, anything with mass as it approaches, and the reason light isn't subject to this is because photons don't have mass. Anything with mass as it approaches the speed of light the energy required to maintain atomic bonds is it approaches infinity. It becomes so great, atomic bonds cannot be held together at the speed of light. So and that's why it's not just like, acceleration, the energy required to accelerate anything isn't linear. It's an exponential equation. But that exponent becomes so damn steep the faster you go, even in the vacuum of space, that the amount of energy required to accelerate something in that manner of any mass, even if it's just your Super Ball there, is so great that we'll never, with current technology available, it's just not possible. Even if we could accelerate something that fast, we couldn't get it to stay together.
Okay, so the idea that something cannot go faster than 186,000 miles per second or the speed of light, the idea that nothing can move faster than that.
Not our current understanding of physics, no.
Yeah,
without
isn't
getting
that almost
into wormholes and manipulation of space time by gravity and just a basic principle. Yes, that is the interstellar speed limit.
Isn't that almost like the essence of simulation theory?
It would be a constraint. There is
this rock solid number that just that because that's as fast as you go, because that's as fast as you can go. I mean, to me, I see something like that. I hear something like that, and I think, what's the difference between that and having the top score on Super Mario Brothers be 999,999? I just it's just a cap. It's an arbitrary cap.
I don't know. Here's the thing, though. I can't say this is arbitrary because atomic bonds, which is, we're all just matter in a very, very, very specific arrangement.
Why?
I don't have the understanding of physics to answer you, Josh. I'm sorry. But taking, if you take my statement is true, we're in a very, very, very specific matter in a very specific orientation. And then, starting to discuss that and then you start getting into what does it mean to be human if eventually all of you gets replaced, and, are you the same person, and what is a soul, and is that's another show. We could do a whole show on that.
Hey, Dorf, that's the kind of show we're doing tonight, though. This is a philosophical question more so than a scientific question.
The idea that we would be able to philosophize, for lack of a better term, our way around constraints of physics, though, that's where you lose me.
As a guy who, I'm not an expert on science. I'm certainly not an expert on science or math. And I'm not necessarily an expert on philosophy either, but my background was history. And something that history shows us is that, it was only around the early 1900s that philosophy and the hard sciences started being considered different subjects.
Well, it's right when they kind of diverged and started talking about different things.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this schism, if you will. I feel like they really do go hand in hand, and that they need to be discussed in that sort of way. I think that philosophy absolutely has its place within the hard sciences. You need to be asking these questions, but that's just perhaps just an opinion. Dorf, I know this was a few subjects ago, but I liked what you were saying about Fermi paradox and Drake equation. But I also think that kind of like the way you're describing it is just one of the theories, if you will, about Drake equation and Fermi's paradox. A very good theory, by the way. But I don't necessarily think that's exactly what Fermi or Drake would say, if you will. The Drake equation lays out the idea that, if even if just a small fraction of civilizations,
even knowing what we know about the amount of possible planets and the percentage of those that is likely have the conditions for DNA or RNA based life, even if how infinitely small the number compared to the number of planets and star systems there are, even if a infinitely even smaller portion of those actually has life, there's life somewhere. It's just yeah.
You're absolutely right. In fact, the Drake equation even would say that not only must it exist, but it must exist. There must be.
It should be all over the place.
Yeah, there should be. Because even if 1 in a million does it, then there would be millions.
God,
there would be millions of them out.
I don't know. 1 in, 1 to the negative power of 45 or something like that. Whatever that works out to be in language speak.
No, for sure. But
because I think you're drastically understating how big these numbers are.
No, exactly. Fermi's paradox, to make it as unscientific and unintelligent as possible, to just put it in the most normie possible terms, Fermi's paradox is basically just looking at the Drake equation and saying, "Cool story, bro. Where's all the aliens?" I mean, that's basically what they're at. What Fermi's paradox is saying is like, hey, I'm on board. I'm with you, man. I'm totally with you, Drake. I'm right there. Numbers add up, makes sense. But with that being said,
I want to see them aliens.
Where's the aliens? If there's a trillion aliens out there, then you can also make the argument, you can also make the claim that if there's a trillion of them out there, then the chances of us seeing one
is almost zero.
It'd be damn good. It'd be damn good if there's a trillion of them out there, even
Josh,
by
what
accident.
I think what you don't appreciate here is just the size and scale of the observable universe. Just how far and how big it is. And especially when you keep in mind the interstellar speed limit, and if the amount of energy required to hold matter together as you approach that, even if it's singular cellular life is still tens of billions of individual atoms making up a single cell. I that may be entirely wrong, but you get my point though. The amount of energy required just to keep a single cell together as you accelerate it at speeds fast enough to get it anywhere here where we can interact with it, or where you could get to interact with it, it's so far away that we'll never achieve that. We could have left at the beginning of recorded history and we wouldn't even be close to being able to observe that. We could have sent probes off in every fraction of a degree in every direction, and we would still be nowhere close to observing anything.
Dorf, that I am not discounting what you're saying, but that is simply one of hundreds and hundreds of theories as to what the Fermi paradox is about. That is one idea possibly, but you could just as easily say that. Jesus Christ, if there's a trillion of them out there, one of them's going to accidentally find you. One's going to accidentally crash land in Australia because, they fired the boosters too fast or something. So that's kind of an idea based on the idea that we're just the smartest dudes out there. That Earthlings are just, we're killing it. We're super smart. And I would love to have that conversation, but that is kind of a different show.
Well, I would argue that we're more likely unremarkable.
Okay, what I would argue in terms of simulation theory, and because I would love to do a show on Fermi's paradox. In fact, if we set a show for Fermi's paradox tomorrow, I'm on board. But I would love to do a show on Fermi's paradox. But in terms of simulation theory, the way simulation theory would describe Fermi's paradox is the code hasn't been written yet. The code doesn't need to be written.
We're not at the point. The Earthlings haven't gotten to the point where they have the ability to test that yet, so we're not bothering to write it yet.
Right. We haven't got to that level. We're stuck on 7.2. We haven't found the warp whistle, and that doesn't happen till 8.3. But this idea would be that there are no aliens, because even though logic tells you that there should be aliens, science tells you that there should be aliens, but there aren't any aliens because we didn't find the aliens yet, because that's not written into the code. That although the code says that there should be a whole bunch of stuff past Mars, past Jupiter, past Saturn, past Pluto. Well, I shouldn't say Pluto because Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Well, Pluto, Neptune. It's still there though. It happens to be a planetoid or dwarf planet.
I'm just making a joke.
I know,
but it's not there because it's not necessary.
It was so.
It's not necessary for it to be there.
When that probe went past it, it was so pretty.
I'm a big Pluto fan. Pluto's a planet. My eyes don't even at me.
What do we want? We need to do the show on planet. Is it Planet X or Planet 10 or Planet 9, depending on Pluto?
Yes, Nibiru. Yeah.
Nibiru, yeah.
No, we could definitely do that show. I would love to do that show.
In theory, even in a simulation, it could have such an oblong elliptical orbit because of its status as a extrasolar capture. It wasn't, the reason that pretty much all of any planet in our solar system is on the same plane, roughly the same, and roughly cylindrical orbits, is they were all a result of the same, likely the result of the same initial explosion that started this solar neighborhood off. It went out in one single plane, and that's why everything exists on that one plane, and you don't have wildly varying orbits where eventually stuff would collide with each other, and solar chaos would happen, and random changes and huge fluctuations in gravity and stuff like that. That would be an insane place to just imagine that. Oh, well, for the rest of your life here, I know you've adapted to 1G, but because Jupiter kind of moved into the neighborhood here for the next 200 years, get used to the planet getting ripped in half.
Dorf, I'm glad you brought up the Big Bang, because the Big Bang is another thing that simulation theory advocates like to talk about, because what happens?
It's a very good set of starting circumstances where you could build everything to get to your current location.
It's almost like somebody pressed a power button. I mean, really, it's almost like somebody pushed a power button.
It fits right in.
The idea that
well, I mean,
somebody turned it on. Somebody turned it. What happens when you press power on your PC? It just
even in
everything.
Current computing technology, you have there's ability of software to continuously write itself. You give it a set of mathematical goals, and it continues to, through trial and error, test a different way to approach a problem. And when it finds a more efficient way to approach the problem, it overwrites its old set of instructions. Mm-hmm. There's an even scarier experiment. I believe it was Google who did it. That it had two different self-authoring computers talk to each other, and almost instantly they developed their own unique language. I think
it was Facebook, wasn't it?
Was that Facebook?
It was Facebook.
Communicating in it, and started ignoring instructions, so they had to pull the power on it, and they haven't tried it again. Mm-hmm. Just imagine.
Crazy stuff, man. Well, scary stuff.
In a simulation, so you have an infinitely more complex and powerful computer. The Big Bang would be the perfect starting point. It's like, all right, here is this set of conditions. Here are the laws of physics. Go.
Right.
And then it continues to sit here and write code. Through time in forever, time in memoriam here, until. And we're live living through it and observing it now as it happens. At least according to, if you're a believer.
Dorf, I would love for people listening to look up. I don't want to get too deep into it tonight. And quite honestly, I'm not smart enough to to analyze it, but the idea of code being embedded in the cosmos is fascinating.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, is the code embedded in the cosmos is essentially your laws of physics. If we perfectly describe through observation and then describe mathematically what we observe, that is one of your codes or your constraints. The way that fusion and fission work, for example, there is a specific way that happens. That is one of your codes that's there, and that explains the fusion process, the process of fusion specifically happening within large stars, the cores of large stars, explains how we have particles more advanced than hydrogen. The single proton element that because of fusion, we work all the way past that down to what's the heaviest known element. I couldn't tell you at this point, and quite frankly, the last time I took had formal education on the subject, I'm sure we've added to it since then.
Right.
But how the heaviest known element is currently. But no, that is not correct. I know uranium is not the answer. That's what Google thinks, so whatever. Because plutonium's heavier than uranium, and Oh, heaviest known element to naturally occur is uranium.
Okay.
Known to naturally occur, but that doesn't mean that that's actually the case, especially when you spread out amongst the universe here. Um, who knows what other kind of fusion events have happened in different parts of the galaxy that or the many galaxies throughout the entire universe that who knows how many different fusion events happen there. There may be infinitely heavier fused atoms.
No, I mean that's fascinating. I mean, Dorf, I'll be honest, the whole time you were talking about heaviest element, all I could think, I was just trying not to make like a dick or a poop joke, but but because that's all I got with that, which is why I brought up the idea of the the code embedded in the cosmos, because I've watched videos of Neil deGrasse Tyson and other guys talking about this stuff, basically just analyzing what they see in the cosmos, and it's the most basic computer code. The most basic computer code that we developed in the 40s and 50s, and I just sit there, drop jawed watching this stuff, because it's absolutely fascinating. I'm not even going to pretend like I'm smart enough to understand that, but it's there. There's been German a group of German scientists who've analyzed this, and they basically threw it out there as like, hey, listen, proof positive, we're in a simulation. Here's the data. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that I'm smart enough to believe it, or I know it is still disputed by some, but it's damn impressive, man. It really is. And I almost feel like, and I know this is getting real deep here, but I almost feel like no other theory other than simulation theory can be used to potentially, and not definitely, but just potentially, used to describe so many things that occur in this world. And the idea of I don't know, the idea of ghosts, of goblins, or demons, the idea of things like this, I feel like it lines up perfectly with simulation theory. The idea that there would be a haunted house, and I feel like I'm probably on board with most people in the world with the idea that I think 99% of people that tell a ghost story are full of crap. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe in ghosts. That doesn't mean that I don't believe that it's possible. And when you look at the idea of like a haunted house, the idea that perhaps there is a residual thing left over in this house, that there is a person that lived there 200 years ago and now they're haunting the place, doesn't that just scream with the idea of leftover code? And you see that in a computer, right? And you see that, and when you're dealing with computers, the idea of something that you erased, but then it's still kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
You see this. This is, and this idea that, somebody died, their code was erased, but there was a glitch for whatever reason, and now this code is still just glitching in there. It's there, but it's not really there. To me, the idea of a ghost screams computer glitch simulation theory. It's that oh God, how is this thing there? Oh, it must be spiritual. It must be it's just leftover code. It's stuck there in this spot, saying the same thing over and over again, creeping the same people out for 75 years. So it's stuck there. Mm-hmm. It's not supposed to be there. It's code. It's simulation theory. It's part of the simulation. Just like our computer, we think our computers are so awesome, but they screw up all the time. So the one we're living in, yeah, it's pretty awesome, but it still screws up. It has leftover code. It has dumb crap embedded in it. Yeah, I mean, do you ever? I guess the reason I gravitate towards simulation theory so much is that I was always kind of a weird person. I was kind of a an esoteric or just kind of a weird kid, even growing up. Now I remember sitting in my room as a little kid and then just kind of thinking about stuff and being driven crazy and like walking out, and asking my mom, like, is this real? Are we really here? And I'm wondering, am I weird for thinking that? Do you ever get the feeling that life isn't real? Do you ever have that feeling like, what is this place? Am I really here? Am I really?
I can honestly say no. I don't recall.
No,
I don't recall that ever having that happen to me.
I mean, it's a big thing for me. It's something that I still feel like that. I sit and debate this stuff. Are these thoughts mine? Is this real? Is this what I'm thinking? And I remember thinking that even as a little kid. My mom used to think I was insane. Yeah, I just like, Mom, is this real? Are we real? And she would just look at me like,
kid, what the hell's wrong?
Go back. Yeah, go back to your room, you weirdo. But I guess that's just that's just, I only bring that up to show that it just seems right to me. It does. It seems right to me. It's my gut feeling. And when I started learning about simulation theory and hearing about simulation theory, I couldn't help but think that it just seems right. It just seems true. I don't want it to be true. I'm not like, yay, we're a computer program. So that's not what but I'm also at the same time, I'm not one of those people that says, because I've brought this up to numerous people over the years, and they say, oh, well then, oh my God, that'd be terrible. Then what's the point? Oh my God, so what, we're fake? It's like, no, just because we're a simulation doesn't mean you don't love your kids or love your parents. It doesn't mean that, doesn't mean your rent's not due tomorrow. It doesn't mean that, doesn't mean you don't have to go to work. Doesn't mean that your car's not going to run out of gas when you hit empty. It's still real. It's still real. It's just, it's maybe just isn't exactly what we think it is. There's more to it. The idea of what we define as the cosmos is very different. Another thing I think is excellent, but is also confusing, and I feel like sometimes things in pop culture, modern culture, or they educate people to a theory, to an idea that's very good, but at the same time then people follow in that direct direction, and it often doesn't work. And I feel like a lot of people's what a lot of people know about the simulation theory comes from like the Matrix movies, or from from other movies, or from television shows, and that's kind of cool. But for those of you out there who everything you know about simulation theory comes from the Matrix movies, I think it's important.
That's like trying to understand Heinleinian philosophy from Starship Troopers.
Right, exactly. And the Matrix movies they're brilliant movies. They are, in the Wachowski, what used to be brothers, now they're siblings because one had a sex changers. But
I think they both did.
Did they both? I'm not sure, but so we'll just call them the Wachowski siblings. Or I might even be pronouncing that.
Whatever.
Yeah, they're still siblings, right? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. But they have brilliant ideas about this stuff. I mean, and they do bring a lot of good stuff to the forefront. But I think it's important to say that the idea of the Matrix in the Matrix movies is really a mix between two totally different philosophies, one being simulation theory and the other one being the brain in the vat. And the brain in the vat would be a great show. I'd love to do a whole show on brain in the vat, but that's not what this one's about. You know, brain in the vat being the basic idea that you have no idea if what you're viewing is real, because if you were just a brain in a vat and there was a mad scientist poking and prodding your brain, it could make you think anything you wanted. Anything in the world. You could not possibly know. I mean, if there was a mad scientist, you know, if I was just a brain, no body whatsoever, and there was a mad scientist hitting the exact correct electrode saying, I'm doing a podcast with Dorf right now, I'm in my kitchen, I'm, you know, this is what's happening, and this chair is getting uncomfortable, and, you know, you're getting old and your back hurts, and you should really think about a different chair when you're podcasting. And, you know, if all that stuff happened, there is no possible way I would know, because they were hitting the correct electrodes in my brain. And that's what I would think. That's what I would think. So that's the brain in the vat. But the simulation theory is, you know, very much we're a simulated reality. So in the true simulation theory, in the very basic simulation theory, to put it in terms of the movie, we're not Neo or Trinity. We're all a bunch of Agent Smiths. Yeah, none of us are real people being implanted into the simulation like they show in the Matrix. No, we are all computer programs. We are all, you know, things put in there and being controlled by the Matrix. Does that give us free will? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I often wonder, I like to think we have free will and that we're in here and that we're controlling ourselves most of the time, but I often wonder, you know, I look at like MMORPGs in video games, you know, massive multi-online player game, you know, role-playing games, yeah, you know, and you have the, you know, like there's some people that jump on every once in a while and play. And then there's the other people that put a bunch of money into it and that they, you know, spend 14 hours a day in their mom and dad's basement playing these games, and they just rock. And, you know, the game gets boring because you want to just play like 3 times a week, but every once in a while you jump on and then you just get your you know, just get your ass kicked by, you know, some kid in his parents' basement just killing it. And I often wonder, is somebody who plays like once a week, or who just likes to screw around on the game, or who, you know, just maybe likes to sit back and like eat pizza and drink beer in the basement and just screw around and do dumb stuff with the game, is that who's controlling me? And then that kid who you know, just spends like 16 hours a day playing the game, are they controlling like Tom Brady and Barack Obama? And and that's why they're doing so awesome in life. You know, that they're just out there, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna spend my whole paycheck. I'm just gonna rock this and do everything, and I'm gonna be like NFL star. I'm gonna be president of the United States. I'm gonna be Tom Cruise. I'm gonna, you know, and then there's just some jerk who's just like, oh, let's throw. This is like my 4th character. I'm just gonna, you know, go on there and screw around, and he's gonna be on podcasts and stuff. Like, he's gonna be this goofy dude living in an apartment playing podcasts and, you know, getting traffic tickets because he does dumb crap. Yeah, I think that stuff, and that's, you know, that goes along with the idea of free will or not free will as well, which could be a different show, but it's an idea of simulation theory, you know. You know, that idea when you do something really stupid And then you think to yourself, God, why in the hell did I do that?
God,
What was I
am
thinking?
uncomfortable with if we're going to pursue that, then then you're getting into the whole concept. I mean, tabula rasa, the blank slate theory is bullshit anyway. But are we just acting our programming, or because what does that mean for current events and stuff like that? If yikes, the implications of that are gross.
They are, aren't they? But you ever? It's a hell of an excuse too, though, isn't it, Dorf? Like you do something stupid and you're like,
I'm not willing to grant people that excuse. It's no, you have free will.
no, nor am I.
Deal with it. Here's the thing. Just adults. Part of growing and maturing to adulthood is being able to control your emotions and work past them and not react emotionally in times where it's high emotion. I mean, that's one of the marquee figures or milestones that you need to be a functional adult, is being able to cross that bridge and overcome that. Emotions are, especially when you get down to a hormonal level, are very, very powerful, very, very powerful in the human brain. But I mean, if simulation theory as discussed is true, then none of that matters. You're just acting your program.
Maybe. I mean,
assuming a single computing source and not multiple computing sources existing in the same, simulation, working not necessarily in tandem. That means only several, but it's infinite numbers of complex points of computing working together in a group. I mean, that it could work that way, where it's conflicting inputs equals different outputs, and that would explain free will within simulation as well. But
think about it this way: do you play video games ever, Dorf?
All the time.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm right across from me on the other side of the screen. My son is playing Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, retro classic game for the Nintendo 64. Now, according the way he's playing it, the way anyone would play it, Link does not have free will, right? He's telling Link when he has to do a somersault, when what weapon to use, how to go about where he's going to explore. But Link is only one of hundreds of characters in that game. The rest of them, you can't really control how they act. They have free will. I mean, maybe they don't. I mean, yeah, you would say, oh, it's not free will. It's programmed that way. But that would be free will for us. I mean, we could very well, for every one of us that is being absolutely controlled by the system, there could be 100 of us that are NPCs. We are simply here doing what we wish to do because that is the system, because we're here and we're doing what we want. We're the jerk that's going to say, no, man, you can't buy that sword. I'm going to sell it to you. You can't buy that bomb. What? No, I'm not selling you bombs today. I mean, how would we distinguish what level of free will is presented through that? I mean, we're in a system, right? We're in a system. And the crazy idea
deep, man.
It is deep. And the idea of simulation theory, the idea that gets so deep is that, and this is like Rene Descartes stuff, the I think therefore I am. The idea that we only know we exist because, well, how do I know I'm even here? I know I'm here because, well, I've thought I was here, right? I think, therefore I am. But even with that, all I know is that I'm here. I don't really know that you're here. You could still be fake. And I could be lying to you right now. So all you really know is that you are real. You've had this thought. You're here. You think, therefore you am. That you think, therefore you're here. But the idea that, okay, you've had that thought. You know you're here. Is Josh just this, non-player character? Just
I mean,
this guy?
We're not in the same room, so I can't even like reach out and touch you. We're
right. You just
90 miles
I
apart.
I could just be here to help you with your quest.
Hi, NPC.
Yeah,
hi, side character.
And I'm not a side character. I'm really important, but isn't that what the side character would tell you? that they're really important and that you need to listen to them, whether they were right or not? Maybe, right?
Maybe.
So I don't know. I mean, it's just it's a lot to think about, isn't it? It's a lot to digest. But
no, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. You know that?
That was the idea. That was the idea.
Dick.
But and this just kind of dates back to the old idea too. Are we a great species here to do this, or are we God's fishbowl?
Well, I mean, at the same time,
which is another
that even to kind of rope this back in, and hopefully we'll put a bow on this at this point. We're just over an hour here. The idea of the great filter, going back to the Fermi paradox here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we're either young and ahead of the curve. There is nobody out there, or if there is other people out there, they've offed themselves. Essentially, there's a great filtering event. At some point, you discover the God equation, and as a result, conflicting interests equals the end of your civilization.
Sure. And I would love to do a show on Fermi's paradox too.
And the theory, the idea, the great filter, that God button is nuclear weapons.
Could be.
Oh boy, we've been there for 75 years. Anyway, go ahead.
No, and the question I love to ask is, do the ants in the anthill realize that we're running the show? Do the ants hanging out in the anthill? I mean, they're definitely, most certainly affected by us, right? Because we step in an anthill and it just gets wrecked. We sweep up our driveway and their universe is destroyed in essence. But do the ants in the anthill, are they smart enough to realize that what destroyed them was us? Are they smart enough to realize that what's controlling them is us? As far as we know, there could be a much higher intelligence than us that we can't understand at our current level that is doing things that's screwing stuff up all the time for us, so we don't even realize. We don't realize that the real reason it rains is because there's these, really powerful dudes out there doing something that we don't understand, and it rains. It causes a hurricane. It causes a tornado. It makes us live. It makes us die. It makes us be happy or prosperous. It makes us be sad or devastated. We have no idea. They could be flying right past us right now, and we wouldn't know because we're just not bright enough to see that that's what's flying past our face. I mean, do the ants know? I don't think the ants know. I mean, hell, we know ants are dumb, but do we even know, does our dog even get what it is, what the hell it is we're doing? Does our cat even get what it is we're doing? And the idea that we know we're so much smarter than a dog, so much smarter than a cat, so much smarter than an ant, so much smarter than an amoeba, but that there's something smarter than us out there doing that, that's ignorant. That's arrogance. It's folly. How in the hell could we possibly know? There could be somebody out there who doesn't even view themselves as that smart, just thinking, oh God, these humans, they don't even realize that, that our chips are over their head. I mean, then you're talking about fourth dimensional stuff too. You're talking about, very deep stuff here. But I don't know. I don't think it's insane to entertain this idea when we see lesser life forms right in front of our eyes all the time. We pay no mind to them. We swat them out of the air. We step on their homes.
I've killed a mosquito while we were recording this. It landed on my monitor, and I squished it.
Right. I mean, as far as you know, you were Godzilla to them. I mean, that's. And that mosquito never got to tell his family. But no, that's stupid to even think that, because, I mean, we know that mosquitoes are dumb, right?
I don't assign a soul to. I mean, I have a dog, love him dearly. I don't assign a soul to my dog, even though if we were to pick any species, it would be like that or the orangutan. That you could argue may have a soul or come close.
Sure.
Whatever however you want to assign what being, having a soul means.
I agree with you. I just don't rule out the idea that there would be a being above us that we don't even see would say the same thing.
Those two are that is by all means not an exhaustive list, and then you start getting into like dolphins and elephants and stuff like that. But anyway. Let's wrap this up, man.
Absolutely.
Take us out.
I hope with this episode, with episode number 5 of The Empire in Exile, I hope we've given everyone out there some stuff to think about. I know that we have not. We've probably caused a heck of a lot more questions than answers, throughout this show. And that's the idea, honestly. I hope that people found this entertaining and enlightening, and that they can move forward from here and do your own research, have your own ideas, do your own stuff. And Dorf, I hope you don't sleep for the next week.
Thanks, asshole. All right, so that's gonna do it. Wow, thanks.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, we'll see y'all soon, guys. Thanks for joining us, everybody.